You have tried. You set the goal, you made the plan, you told yourself this time would be different. And for a while, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, it actually was. And then life intervened, or the motivation faded, or one bad day became two, and the whole thing quietly unraveled. And the story you told yourself afterwards was always some version of the same thing. I just need more discipline. That story, that particular exhausting story, is one you probably absorbed from the grind-first world. The endless content telling you to wake up earlier, grind harder, stop making excuses, do the 75 hard, earn your rest. The message underneath all of it is always the same. Your life isn't where you want it to be because you haven't suffered enough for it yet. I want to offer you a completely different explanation today. And a completely different day. Welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm Heidi, and my feathered companion is Jesper, the Moonstone owl archivist of Emberhollow. We are so glad you found us. Before we go any further, I want to say something directly to you. If you have been doing everything they told you to do, the early starts, the no days off mentality, the tracking and the accountability apps and the discipline challenges, and you still feel like you are failing, I want you to hear this. That is not a character flaw. That is not evidence that you are weak or not cut out for this, or somehow different from the people who seem to manage it. That is what happens when sincere, caring people are handed the wrong tools for the right goal. I know that frustration, the specific, bone-deep exhaustion of genuinely wanting to change your life, of caring about it deeply, and still feeling like you are running in place, of trying harder every time and ending up in the same place, of wondering, quietly, whether something is simply wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. The model you were given was wrong. And that is exactly what this video is about. I want to be honest about something, because I think you deserve to know exactly where this channel stands. Hustle culture is not neutral. While it is so prevalent in our culture as to be considered normal, it treats human beings as productivity machines, measures a life by its output, and defines rest as something you earn rather than something you need. It tells you that your worth is in your work rate, that if you are tired, you are weak, that if you have not yet achieved what you want, the answer is always to push harder. We are against that. Not because ambition is wrong, it isn't. Not because wanting to grow is misguided, it is one of the most human things there is. But because this approach to change is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how human beings actually work, it treats the symptoms and ignores the root. It sells discipline as the destination when discipline was never the destination at all. What we are for is something quieter and, we believe, far more powerful. We are for becoming. For the slow, honest, sometimes uncomfortable work of growing into a truer version of who you already are. For change that lasts because it comes from identity, from who you are, rather than from willpower, which is always temporary. Rohn understood this, and it is where we begin. And what he understood is going to reframe everything you thought you knew about why change has been so hard. Rohn spent decades teaching one idea that most people hear once, nod at, and then promptly forget, only to spend years slowly discovering it was true all along. The major value in life is not what you get. The major value in life is what you become. Not what you achieve, not how disciplined you appear, not what your productivity score looks like at the end of the week. What you become. Most people hear that and think they understand it. But there is a layer underneath it that almost nobody talks about. And it is the part that actually changes things. The productivity industry reversed this completely. It made doing the goal and being the afterthought. Get the results, then maybe you will feel like the person who deserves them. Grind your way into the identity you want, one grueling day at a time. But Rohn's insight, and decades of psychology backs him up, is that it works the other way around. Identity shapes behaviour, not the reverse. You do not grind your way into becoming someone different. You become someone different, and the behaviour follows, naturally, without force, without the daily war against yourself that the grind mentality has normalized. Think about someone you know who seems to have it all together, who gets up without a struggle, who eats well without feeling deprived, who shows up consistently without needing a system to keep them accountable. They are not grinding harder than you. In fact, they would tell you the opposite. It doesn't feel like effort. It feels like who they are. That is not a discipline gap between you and them. It is an identity gap. And that gap closes through becoming, not through suffering more. Here is the grind-first model for change. Decide what you want to do differently. Generate enough motivation and begin. Apply willpower for as long as it holds. And when willpower runs out, and it always runs out, return to where you started and conclude that you need to try harder next time. This model fails almost everyone, almost every time. Not because the people using it are weak, but because it is structurally broken. It is trying to build new behaviour on an unchanged foundation. Willpower is a finite resource. It depletes. It is affected by stress, by sleep, by how safe you feel, by how many other things you are already managing. The achievement treadmill treats willpower as something that separates the serious from the uncommitted. In reality, it is just a cognitive resource, one that runs out faster under the exact conditions that most people trying to change their lives are already living in. Discipline applied to a self that hasn't changed is friction. Nothing more. But when you change at the level of identity, when you actually become someone who values what you say you want, the behaviour stops requiring force. You do not need to discipline yourself out of bed in the morning if you are someone who genuinely wants to meet the day. You do not need to fight yourself to do the work if you are someone who finds meaning in it. This is not a small distinction. This is the entire thing. Before I give you the practice, I need to tell you something about how real change actually arrives. Because if you don't know this, the practice will confuse you. Real identity-level change tends to arrive in a way that the push-harder world never prepares you for. It doesn't arrive with a surge of motivation. It arrives first as discomfort. The first phase is dissonance. The gap between who you are and who you sense you could be becomes impossible to ignore. It feels like restlessness, low-grade dissatisfaction, a persistent sense that something has to change. The grind mentality will tell you to use this as fuel to work harder. That is the wrong instruction. This dissonance is not a call to action, it is a call to honesty. The second phase is uncertainty. The old way no longer fits, but the new one isn't visible yet. This is the threshold, the in-between. The push-harder approach hates this phase. It looks like doing nothing, and it cannot tolerate stillness. But the uncertainty is not emptiness. It is the space in which something new becomes possible. The third phase is discovery. You find what you actually want, not what you were told to want, not what looks impressive, not what the performance culture says success is supposed to look like. What genuinely calls to you. And when you move from that place, progress tends to feel remarkably different from grinding. It feels like moving with the current instead of against it. I want to come back to that third phase, discovery, inside the practice, because it's the part most people miss entirely. These are not problems to solve. They are a passage to walk through. In the Ember Highlands of Emberhollow, the dragons do not practice being dragons. They do not discipline themselves to breathe fire, or force themselves to protect what they love, or set morning alarms to ensure they embody dragon nature by 5 a.m. They are what they are. Their behaviour flows from their identity without struggle, without systems, without a single motivational poster on the cave wall. A dragon does not need a productivity framework. It needs only to know what it is. That is the invitation here, not to force yourself into a new set of behaviours through sheer grinding will, but to discover, clearly, honestly, without the noise of constant instruction, who you actually are in the process of becoming. This practice takes one day, not a perfect day, just one day of honest, unhurried attention. You need something to write in and a willingness to see yourself clearly. It has 3 parts. And I want to give you a warning before you begin. The first question is going to be uncomfortable. The second one might be the most hopeful thing you have written in years. Hold both of them. In the morning, before the world asks anything of you, sit down and write. Not to solve anything, not to plan. Just to see. 2 questions. Answer them as honestly as you can. First, what is the persistent, low-grade dissatisfaction you have quietly learned to live with? Not the dramatic suffering, but what you have normalized. What do you complain about to yourself but never actually change? Second, if nothing changes, your habits, your choices, your daily patterns, describe an ordinary Tuesday 5 years from now. Where do you wake up? What does your body feel like? What fills your hours? How do you feel when the day ends? Write without cruelty. Write without softening. This is the anti-vision, not a punishment, but an honest map of where your current road leads if you stay on it. In the afternoon, return to your journal. Set aside practicality. Set aside what other people expect. Set aside every bro-code metric of success, the income numbers, the follower counts, the optimized morning routine. Answer only this. If you could snap your fingers and find yourself in a completely different life 3 years from now, not what looks impressive, but what you actually want, what does an ordinary Tuesday look like? Same level of detail, same honesty, but in the direction of what genuinely calls to you. Then write one sentence. Begin it. I am the type of person who. Finish it without editing. This is the seed of your new identity. This, right here, is the discovery phase. The thing most people skip entirely because the grind-first world trained them to jump straight from the problem to the plan. But the vision comes first. Who you are becoming comes first. Everything else follows from that. In the evening, sit with both of what you wrote. Feel the gap between the two Tuesdays. Notice what it is made of, not with judgment, but with curiosity. And then, in the quiet of the evening, something tends to happen that I want you to be ready for. The gap stops feeling like failure. It starts feeling like direction. Ask yourself gently one last question. What is one thing I would do differently tomorrow if I were already the person I described? One thing. Small enough to actually do. That is the first act of becoming. The grind mentality will tell you that your life gets better when you work harder. We believe something different here. We believe your life gets better when you become more honest, more intentional, more aligned with who you actually are, rather than who the productivity industry thinks you should be. Rohn was right. The major value is not what you get. It is what you become. And the becoming does not require a perfect plan, or a streak of flawless days, or the kind of suffering that the push-harder world mistakes for seriousness. It requires one honest day, like this one, and then one small true step tomorrow. That is how it starts. That is how it has always started. If this resonated, if you are ready to step away from the grind and start the quieter, more honest work of becoming, the Complete Restart Method is a free guide. 6 steps for finding your way back to yourself whenever you lose the thread. The link is in the description below. And if you're standing at your own square one right now, the video on your screen will give you the most thorough explanation of the restart method and how you can do it. Until then, seekers, walk gently, be kind, and remember, you are already enough. The best self you seek is already inside you.